Tiger Tales, the tiger, the ram, and the jackal. Tiger Leopard was returning home from hunting on one occasion when he lighted on the kraal of Ram. Now Tiger had never seen Ram before, and accordingly, approaching submissively, he said, "Good day, friend. What may your name be?" The other, in his gruff voice, and striking his breast with his forefoot, said, "I am Ram. Who are you?" "Tiger," answered the other, more dead than alive, and then, taking leave of Ram, he ran home as fast as he could. Jackal lived at the same place as Tiger did, and the latter, going to him, said, "Friend Jackal, I am quite out of breath, and am half dead with fright, for I have just seen a terrible-looking fellow, with a large and thick head, and—" On my asking him what his name was, he answered, "I am Ram." "What a foolish fellow you are," cried Jackal, "to let such a nice piece of flesh stand. Why did you do so? But we shall go tomorrow and eat it together." Next day the two set off for the kraal of Ram, and as they appeared over a hill, Ram, who had turned out to look about him, and was calculating where he should that day crop a tender salad, saw them, and he immediately went to his wife and said, "I fear this is our last day, for Jackal and Tiger are both coming against us. What shall we do?" "Don't be afraid," said the wife, "but take up the child in your arms, go out with it, and pinch it to make it cry as if it were hungry." Ram did so as the Confederates came on. No sooner did Tiger cast his eyes on Ram than fear again took possession of him, and he wished to turn back. Jackal had provided against this, and made Tiger fast to himself with a leathern thong, and said, "Come on," when Ram cried in a loud voice and pinching his child at the same time, "You have done well, friend Jackal, to have brought us Tiger to eat, for you hear how my child is crying for food." On these dreadful words Tiger, notwithstanding the entreaties of Jackal to let him go, to let him loose, set off in the greatest alarm, dragged Jackal after him over hill and valley, through bushes and over rocks, and never stopped to look behind him till he brought back himself and half-dead Jackal to his place again. And so Ram escaped, the unmannerly tiger. Mountain Uncle was the name given by the villagers to a splendid striped tiger that lived among the highlands of Kangwen, the long province which from its cliffs overlooks the Sea of Japan. Hunters rarely saw him, and among his fellow tigers, the Mountain Uncle boasted that, though often fired at, he had never been wounded, while, as for traps, he knew all about them and laughed at the devices used by man to catch him and to strip him of his coveted skin. In summer, he kept among the high hills and lived on fat deer. In winter, when heavy snow, biting winds, and terrible cold kept human beings within doors, old Mountain Uncle would sally forth to the villages. There he would prowl around the stables, the cattle enclosures, or the pig pens in hopes of clawing and dragging out a young donkey, a fat calf, or a suckling pig. Too often he succeeded, so that he was the terror of the country for leagues around. One day in autumn, Mountain Uncle was rambling among the lower hills. Though far from any village, he kept a sharp lookout for traps and hunters, but none seemed to be near. He was very hungry and hoped for game, but on coming round a great rock, Mountain Uncle suddenly saw in his path some feet ahead, as he thought, a big tiger like himself. He stopped, twitched his tail most ferociously as a challenge, showed fight by growling, and got ready to spring. What was his surprise to see the other tiger doing exactly the same thing. Mountain Uncle was sure there would be a terrible struggle, but this was just what he wanted, for he expected to win. But after a tremendous leap in the air, he landed in a pit, and all of a heap, bruised and disappointed. There was no tiger to be seen, but instead a heavy lid of logs had closed over his head with a crash, and he lay in darkness. Old Mountain Uncle was caught at last. Yes, the hunter had concealed the pit with sticks and leaves, and on the upright timbers, covered with vines and brushwood, had hung a looking-glass. Mountain Uncle had often beheld his own face and body in the water when he stooped to drink, But this time, not seeing any water, he was deceived into thinking a real tiger wanted to fight him. By and by, a Buddhist priest came along who believed in being kind to all living creatures. Hearing an animal moaning, he opened the trap, and lifting the lid saw old Mountain Uncle at the bottom licking his bruised paw. "Oh, please, Mr. Man, let me get out. I'm hurt badly," said the tiger. Thereupon the priest lifted up one of the logs and slid it down until it rested on the bottom of the pit. Then the tiger climbed up and out. Old Mountain Uncle expressed his thanks volubly, saying to the shaven head, "I am deeply grateful to you, sir, for helping me out of my trouble. Nevertheless, as I am very hungry, I must eat you up." The priest, very much surprised and indignant, protested against such vile ingratitude. To say the least, it was very bad manners and entirely against the law of the mountains, and he appealed to a big tree to decide between them. The spirit in the tree spoke through the rustling leaves and declared that the man should go free and that the tiger was both ungrateful and unmannerly. Old Mountain Uncle was not satisfied yet, especially as the priest was unusually fat and would make a very good dinner. However, he allowed the man to appeal once more, this time to a big rock. "The man is certainly right, venerable Mountain Uncle, and you are wholly wrong," said the spirit in the rock. "Your master, the mountain spirit, who rides on the green bull and the piebald horse to punish his enemies, will certainly chastise you if you devour this priest. You will be no fit messenger of the mountain lord if you are so ungrateful as to eat the man who saved you from starvation or death in the trap. It is shockingly bad manners even to think of such a thing." The tiger felt ashamed, but his eyes still glared with hunger, so to be sure of saving his own skin, the priest proposed to make the toad a judge. The tiger agreed. But the toad, with his gold-rimmed eyes, looked very wise, and instead of answering quickly, as the tree and rock did, deliberated a long time. The priest's heart sank while the tiger moved his jaws as if anticipating his feast. He felt sure that old Speckled Back would decide in his favor. "I must go and see the trap before I can make up my mind," said the toad, who looked as solemn as a magistrate. So all three leaped, hopped, or walked to the trap. The tiger, moving fast, was there first, which was just what the toad, who was a friend of the priest, wanted. Besides, old Speckled Back was diligently looking for a crack in the rocks nearby. So while the toad and the tiger were studying the matter, the priest ran off and saved himself within the monastery gates. When at last old Speckled Back decided against Mountain Uncle, and in favor of the man, he had no sooner finished his judgment than he hopped into the rock crevice and, crawling far inside, defied the tiger, calling him an unmannerly brute and an ungrateful beast, and daring him to do his worst. Old Mountain Uncle was so mad with rage and hunger that his craftiness seemed turned into stupidity. He clawed at the rock to get at the toad, but Speckled Back, safe within, only laughed. Unable to do any harm, the tiger flew into a passion of rage. The hotter his temper grew, the more he lost his wit. Poking his nose inside the crack, he rubbed it so hard on the rough rock that he soon bled to death. When the hunter came along, he marveled at what he saw, but he was glad to get rich by selling the tiger's fur, bones, and claws, for in Korea nothing sells so well as a tiger. As for the toad, he told to several generations of his descendants the story of how he outwitted the old Mountain Uncle. What makes the eclipse? Very early in the history of the world, a beautiful female child, whom the parents called Kanam, was born to a humble family, who lived in a village on the borders of one of the great Khasi forests. She was such a beautiful child that her mother constantly expressed her fears lest some stranger passing that way might kidnap her or cast an evil eye upon her, so she desired to bring her up in as much seclusion as their poor circumstances would permit. To this the father would not agree. He told his wife not to harbor foolish notions, but to bring up the child naturally like other people's children, and teach her to work and to make herself useful. So Ka-Nam was brought up like other children and taught to work and to make herself useful. One day, as she was taking her pitcher to the well, a big tiger came out of the forest and carried her to his lair. She was terrified almost to death, for she knew that the tigers were the most cruel of all beasts. The name of this tiger was Kala, and his purpose in carrying off the maiden was to eat her. But when he saw how young and small she was, and that she would not suffice for one full meal for him, he decided to keep her in his lair until she grew bigger. He took great care of her and brought home to her many delicacies which her parents had never been able to afford. And as she never suspected the cruel designs of the tiger, she soon grew to feel quite at home and contented in the wild beast den, and she grew up to be a maiden of unparalleled loveliness. The tiger was only waiting his opportunity, and when he saw that she had grown up, he determined to kill her, for he was longing to eat the beautiful damsel whom he had fed with such care. One day, as he busied himself about his lair, he began to mutter to himself, "Now the time has come when I can repay myself for all my trouble in feeding this human child. Tomorrow I will invite all my fellow tigers here, and we will feast upon the maiden." It happened that a little mouse was foraging near the den at that time, and she overheard the tiger muttering to himself. She was very sorry for the maiden, for she knew that she was alone and friendless and entirely at the mercy of the tiger. So the little mouse went and told the maiden that the tigers were going to kill her and eat her on the following day. Ka-Nam was in great distress and wept very bitterly. She begged of the mouse to help her to escape, and the mouse, having a tender heart, gave her what aid was in her power. In the first place, she told the maiden to go out of the den and to seek the cave of the magician Yuhainro, the giant toad, to whom the realm was under tribute. He was a peevish and exacting monster from whom everyone recoiled, and Ka-Nam would have been terrified to approach him under ordinary conditions. But the peril which faced her gave her courage, and under the guidance of the mouse she went to the toad's cave. When he saw her and beheld how fair she was, and learned how she had been the captive of his old rival the tiger, he readily consented to give her his protection. So he clothed her in a toad skin, warning her not to divest herself of it in the presence of others on pain of death. This he did in order to keep the maiden in his own custody and to make her his slave. When the mouse saw that her beautiful friend had been transformed into the likeness of a hideous toad, she was very sorrowful and regretted having sent her to seek the protection of Yuhainro, for she knew that as long as she remained in the jungle, Ka-Nam would be henceforth forced to live with the toads and to be their slave. So she led her away secretly and brought her to the magic tree which was in that jungle, and told the maiden to climb into the tree that she might be transported to the sky, where she would be safe from harm forever. So the maid climbed into the magic tree and spoke the magic words taught her by the mouse. "Grow tall, dear tree, the sky is near, expand and grow," upon which the tree began to expand upwards till its branches touched the sky, and then the maiden alighted in the blue realm, and the tree immediately dwindled to its former size. By and by, the tiger and his friends arrived at the den, ravenous for their feast, and when he found that his prey had disappeared, his disappointment and anger knew no bounds and were terrible to witness. He uttered loud threats for vengeance on whoever had connived at the escape of his captive, and his roars were so loud that the animals in the jungle trembled with fear. His fellow tigers also became enraged when they understood that they had been deprived of their feast, and they turned on Yukla and in their fury tore him to death. Meanwhile, Ka-Nam wandered homeless in the blue realm, clothed in the toad skin. Everyone there lived in palaces and splendor, and they refused to admit the loathsome, venomous-looking toad within their portals, while she, mindful of the warning of Yuhainro, the magician, feared to uncover herself. At last she appeared before the palace of Kasni, the sun, who, ever gracious and tender, took pity on her and permitted her to live in a small outhouse near the palace. One day, thinking herself to be unobserved, the maid put aside her covering of toadskin and sat to rest a while in her small room, but before going abroad she carefully wrapped herself in the skin as before. She was accidentally seen by the son of Kasni, who was a very noble youth. He was astonished beyond words to find a maiden of such rare beauty hiding herself beneath a hideous toadskin and living in his mother's outhouse, and he marveled what evil spell had caused her to assume such a loathsome covering. Her beauty enthralled him, and he fell deeply in love with her. He hastened to make his strange discovery known to his mother, and entreated her to lodge the maiden without delay in the palace, and to let her become his wife. Kasngi, having the experience and foresight of age, determined to wait before acceding to the request of her young and impetuous son until she herself had ascertained whether a maid such as her son described really existed beneath the toadskin, or he had been deluded by some evil enchantment into imagining that he had seen a maiden in the outhouse. So Kasni set herself to watch the movements of the toad in the outhouse, and one day, to her surprise and satisfaction, she beheld the maiden uncovered, and was astonished at her marvelous beauty and pleasing appearance. But she did not want her son to rush into an alliance with an enchanted maiden, so she gave him a command that he should not go near or speak to the maid until the toadskin had been destroyed and the evil spell upon her broken. Once again Kasni set herself to watch the movements of the toad, and one day her vigilance was rewarded by discovering Kanam asleep with the toadskin cast aside. Kasni crept stealthily and seized the toadskin and burned it to ashes. Henceforth the maiden appeared in her own natural form, and lived very happily as the wife of Kasni's son, released forever from the spell of the giant toad. There was an old feud between Yuhainro and Kasnigi because she refused to pay him tribute, and when he learned that she had willfully destroyed the magic skin in which he had wrapped the maiden, his anger was kindled against Kasni, and he climbed up to the blue realm to devour her. She bravely withstood him, and a fierce struggle ensued which was witnessed by the whole universe. When mankind saw the conflict, they became silent, subdued with apprehension lest the cruel monster should conquer their benefactress. They uttered loud cries and began to beat mournfully on their drums till the world was full of sound and clamor. Like all bullies, Yuhainro was a real coward at heart, and when he heard the noise of drums and shouting on the earth, his heart melted within him with fear, for he thought it was the tramp of an advancing army coming to give him battle. He quickly released his hold upon Kasnei and retreated with all speed from the blue realm. Thus mankind were the unconscious deliverers of their noble benefactress from the hand of her cruel oppressor. Yuhainro continues to make periodical attacks on the sun to this day, and in many countries people call the attacks eclipses, but the ancient cases who saw the great conflict knew it to be the giant toad, the great cannibal, trying to devour Kasngi. He endeavors to launch his attacks when the death of some great personage in the world is impending, hoping to catch mankind too preoccupied to come to the rescue. Throughout the whole of Kasi land, to this day, it is the custom to beat drums and to raise a loud din whenever there is an eclipse. The tiger and the monkeys. At the beginning of time, the animals were free and living wild and unruly lives, but there were so many disputes and quarrels that they convened a council to choose a king to reign over them. With one accord, they nominated the tiger to be king. not for any special wisdom or merit which he possessed, but because of his great strength by which he would be able to subdue the turbulent beasts. Although he possessed greater strength than any of his kindred, the tiger was more ignorant of the ways and habits of his subjects than any of the animals. He was so self-absorbed that he never troubled himself to study the ways of others, and this caused him to act very foolishly at times and to make himself ridiculous, for the animals were tempted to take advantage of his great ignorance and to play tricks upon him whenever they thought they could do so undetected. This tale relates how the monkeys played a cunning trick on their king, which caused mortal enmity to spring up between him and them forever. One hot day the tiger walked abroad to take an airing, but the sun being so hot, he turned aside to shelter under some leafy trees, and there he fell asleep. Presently he awoke, and on awaking he heard coming from overhead very melodious singing, to which he listened enraptured. It was the little insect, Shilimin, chirping on a leaf, but she was so small the tiger could not see her, and being so ignorant, he had no idea whose voice it was. He peered to the branches right and left, trying to discover the singer, but he only saw a company of monkeys at play in the trees, so he began to question them who it was that was singing above him. Now the monkeys and all the jungle animals were perfectly familiar with the singing of Shilimin and recognized the voice from afar. They thought it very contemptible in the king to be more ignorant than themselves, and one audacious young monkey, in a spirit of mischief, answered that the singer was their youngest sister. The other monkeys were perturbed when they heard their brother giving such an impudent answer, thinking that the tiger would be offended and would punish them with his great strength. They were preparing to run away when, to their amazement, they heard the tiger replying to their rash young brother in a gentle voice and with most affable manners, and saying to him, "You are my brother-in-law. Your sister has the most beautiful voice in the jungle. I will make her my wife." If the predicament of the monkeys was bad at the beginning, it was doubly so now, for they felt that, things having taken such an unexpected turn, it would be impossible to conceal from the knowledge of the tiger their brother's offense. They determined, however, not to desert the young culprit, and if possible, to try and rescue him. So they approached the tiger, and with much seeming courtesy and honor they put forward the excuse that their sister was very young and not yet of marriageable age. This excuse made no impression on the king, for he said, "So much the better. As she is young, I can mold her to my own ways, and bring her up according to my own views, which would not be so easy if she were fully matured." To which the monkeys replied, "Our sister is not amenable to instruction. She is indolent and fond of her own will." The tiger, however, was so lovesick that no argument had weight with him. He thought the brothers were severe in their judgment, and expressed his conviction that she could not be as slothful as they said, for she was foregoing her midday repose for the sake of making music to cheer the animals. He ordered them to come down from the trees and to lead their sister to him. After this, the monkeys feared to argue further, so they pretended to agree to his commands, but they craved a boon from him and asked for a little time to make preparations, as it would not be becoming for one of such a high degree to join himself with a poor family like theirs without their showing him adequate honor, such as was due to his rank. This request the tiger granted, and it was arranged between them that he was to come and claim his bride at the time of the full moon, a week from that day, and so the tiger departed with evident goodwill. As soon as they found themselves alone, the monkeys began to think out some plans by which they could meet the situation and escape exposure. They decided to call together a council of the whole tribe of monkeys, for they well foresaw that the whole tribe would be in peril if the tiger found out what they had done. So the monkeys came to hold a council, and in that council it was decided that they must continue to keep up the duplicity begun. And in order to hoodwink the tiger still further, they planned to make a clay image after the fashion of a woman and to present her to the tiger as his bride. So they made preparations for a great feast, but they did not invite anybody except their own tribe to attend. During the succeeding days, the monkeys busied themselves collecting clay and molding it into an image which they propped against a tree. They were unable to make the head of one piece with the body, so they molded the head separately, and when it was finished, they placed it loosely on the body of the image. They then proceeded to dress the image in all the finery they could procure, and they carefully covered the head and face with a veil so as to hide it from the eyes of the bridegroom. The night of the full moon arrived, and all the monkey family were assembled at the appointed place, where with much clatter and seeming joy they awaited the arrival of the tiger. Though they were really very anxious about the consequences, everything was in readiness, and the place laid out with many kinds of food, so as to lead the tiger to think that they were sincere in their welcome. He came early, very gorgeously arrayed, and carrying over his shoulder a net full of betel nut and pan leaves, and was received with loud acclamation by his prospective relatives. But the tiger hardly deigned to give them a greeting, so impatient was he to meet his bride, and he demanded to be taken to her immediately. The monkeys led him with great ceremony to the clay image, but their hearts were beating fast with fear lest he should discover their fraud. When they reached the image, they said, "This is our sister. Take her, and may she be worthy of the great honor you have conferred upon her." Thereupon they retired to a safe distance. When the tiger saw how finely dressed she was and how modestly she had veiled herself, he felt a little timid, for she was so much finer than the little gray monkey he had been picturing to himself. He came up to her and said deferentially, as he slung the net of betel nut round her neck, "You are the chief person at this feast. Take the pan and the betel nut and divide them among the company according to custom." The bride, however, remained motionless and mute, seeing which the tiger asked the monkeys in a displeased voice, "Why doth not your sister answer me nor obey my commands?" "She is very young," they replied. "Perhaps she has fallen asleep while waiting for you. Pull the string of the net, and she will awaken." Upon this, the tiger gave the string a sharp tug, and the loose head of the image rolled onto the floor, whereupon the monkeys, uttering the most piercing shrieks, pounced upon the tiger in a mob, declaring that he had killed their sister, and that he had only made a pretense of marrying her in order to get hold of her to kill her. A fierce and bloody fight ensued, in which the tiger was nearly killed, and ever since then the tiger has feared the monkeys, and they are the only animals in the jungle that dare challenge him to fight. He never discovered their duplicity, but he learned one very effective lesson, for he has never committed the indiscretion of proposing marriage with an unknown bride since that unfortunate affair with the monkeys, while the monkeys are rejoicing in the cunning by which they saved their brother and their tribe from punishment. Mowgli's brothers, now Chill the kite brings home the night that Mang the bat sets free. The herds are shut in byre, and hut for loose till dawn are we. This is the hour of pride and power, talon and tush and claw. Oh, hear the call? Good, hunt and all that, keep the jungle law. Night song in the jungle. It was 7 o'clock of a very warm evening in the Seonee Hills when Father Wolf woke up from his day's rest, scratched himself, yawned, and spread out his paws one after the other to get rid of the sleepy feeling in their tips. Mother Wolf lay with her big gray nose dropped across her 4 tumbling, squealing cubs, and the moon shone into the mouth of the cave where they all lived. "Oh," said Father Wolf, "it is time to hunt again." And he was going to spring downhill when a little shadow with a bushy tail crossed the threshold and whined, Good luck go with you, O chief of the wolves, and good luck and strong white teeth go with the noble children, that they may never forget the hungry in this world." It was the jackal, Tabaqui, the dish licker, and the wolves of India despise Tabaqui because he runs about making mischief and telling tales and eating rags and pieces of leather from the village rubbish heaps. But they are afraid of him too, because Tabaqui, more than anyone else in the jungle, is apt to go mad, and then he forgets that he was ever afraid of anyone and runs through the forest biting everything in his way. Even the tiger runs and hides when little Tabaqui goes mad, for madness is the most disgraceful thing that can overtake a wild creature. We call it hydrophobia, but they call it dawani, the madness, and run. "Enter then and look," said Father Wolf stiffly, "but there is no food here." "For a wolf, no," said Tabaqui, "but for so mean a person as myself, a dry bone is a good feast. Who are we, the Gidur log, to pick and choose?" He scuttled to the back of the cave, where he found the bone of a buck with some meat on it, and sat cracking the end merrily. "All thanks for this good meal," he said, licking his lips. "How beautiful are the noble children! How large are their eyes, and so young too! Indeed, indeed, I might have remembered that the children of kings are men from the beginning." Now Tabaqui knew as well as anyone else that there is nothing so unlucky as to compliment children to their faces, and it pleased him to see Mother and Father Wolf look uncomfortable. Tabaqui sat still, rejoicing in the mischief that he had made, and then he said spitefully, "Our Khan, the big one, has shifted his hunting grounds. He will hunt among these hills for the next moon, so he has told me. Shere Khan was the tiger who lived near the Wangunga River, 20 miles away. He has no right." Father Wolf began angrily, "By the law of the jungle, he has no right to change his quarters without due warning. He will frighten every head of game within 10 miles, and I have to kill for 2 these days." "His mother did not call him Lungri for nothing," said Mother Wolf quietly. "He has been lame in 1 foot from his birth. That is why he has only killed cattle. Now the villagers of the Wangunga are angry with him, and he has come here to make our villagers angry. They will scour the jungle for him when he is far away, and we and our children must run when the grass is set alight. Indeed, we are very grateful to Shere Khan. Shall I tell him of your gratitude?" said Tabaqui. "Out!" snapped Father Wolf. "Out and hunt with thy master. Thou hast done harm enough for 1 night." "I go," said Tabaqui quietly. "Ye can hear Shere Khan below in the thickets. I might have saved myself the message." Father Wolf listened, and below in the valley that ran down to a little river, he heard the dry, angry, snarly, sing-song whine of a tiger who has caught nothing and does not care if all the jungle knows it. "The fool," said Father Wolf, "to begin a night's work with that noise. Does he think that our buck are like his fat Wangunga bullocks?" "Shh! It is neither bullock nor buck he hunts tonight," said Mother Wolf. "It is man." The whine had changed to a sort of humming purr that seemed to come from every quarter of the compass. It was the noise that bewilders woodcutters and gypsies sleeping in the open, and makes them run sometimes into the very mouth of the tiger. "Man!" said Father Wolf, showing all his white teeth. "Faugh! Are there not enough beetles and frogs in the tanks that he must eat man, and on our ground too? The law of the jungle, which never orders anything without a reason, forbids every beast to eat man except when he is killing, to show his children how to kill, and then he must hunt outside the hunting grounds of his pack or tribe. The real reason for this is that man killing means, sooner or later, the arrival of white men on elephants with guns and hundreds of brown men with gongs and rockets and torches. Then everybody in the jungle suffers. The reason the beasts give among themselves is that man is the weakest and most defenseless of all living things, and it is unsportsmanlike to touch him. They say too, and it is true, that man-eaters become mangy and lose their teeth. The purr grew louder and ended in the full-throated "Arr!" of the tiger's charge. Then there was a howl, an untigerish howl from Shere Khan. "He has missed," said Mother Wolf. "What is it?" Father Wolf ran out a few paces and heard Shere Khan muttering and mumbling savagely as he tumbled about in the scrub. "The fool has had no more sense than to jump at a woodcutter's campfire and has burned his feet," said Father Wolf with a grunt. "Tabaqui is with him." "Something is coming uphill," said Mother Wolf, twitching one ear. "Get ready." The bushes rustled a little in the thicket, and Father Wolf dropped with his haunches under him, ready for his leap. Then, if you had been watching, you would have seen the most wonderful thing in the world. The wolf checked in mid-spring. He made his bound before he saw what it was he was jumping at, and then he tried to stop himself. The result was that he shot up straight into the air for 4 or 5 feet, landing almost where he left ground. "Man!" he snapped. "A man's cub, look!" Directly in front of him, holding on by a low branch, stood a naked brown baby who could just walk, as soft and as dimpled a little atom as ever came to a wolf's cave at night. He looked up into Father Wolf's face and laughed. "Is that a man's cub?" said Mother Wolf. "I have never seen one. Bring it here." A wolf accustomed to moving his own cubs can, if necessary, mouth an egg without breaking it, and though Father Wolf's jaws closed right on the child's back, not a tooth even scratched the skin as he laid it down among the cubs. "How little, how naked, and how bold," said Mother Wolf softly. The baby was pushing his way between the cubs to get close to the warm hide. "Ahai! He is taking his meal with the others. And so this is a man's cub. Now, was there ever a wolf that could boast of a man's cub among her children? I have heard now and again of such a thing, but never in our pack or in my time," said Father Wolf. "He is altogether without hair, and I could kill him with a touch of my foot. But see, he looks up and is not afraid." The moonlight was blocked out of the mouth of the cave, for Shere Khan's great square head and shoulders were thrust into the entrance. Tabaqui, behind him, was squeaking, my lord, it went in here. Shere Khan does us great honor," said Father Wolf, but his eyes were very angry. "What does Shere Khan need?" "My quarry. A man's cub went this way," said Shere Khan. "Its parents have run off. Give it to me." Shere Khan had jumped at a woodcutter's campfire, as Father Wolf had said, and was furious from the pain of his burned feet. But Father Wolf knew that the mouth of the cave was too narrow for a tiger to come in by. Even where he was, Shere Khan's shoulders and forepaws were cramped for want of room, as a man's would be if he tried to fight in a barrel. "The wolves are a free people," said Father Wolf. "They take orders from the head of the pack, and not from any striped cattle dealer. The man's cub is ours to kill if we choose. Ye choose and ye do not choose. What talk is this of choosing? By the bull that I killed, am I to stand nosing into your dog's den for my fair dues? It is I, Shere Khan, who speak." The tiger's roar filled the cave with thunder. Mother Wolf shook herself clear of the cubs and sprang forward, her eyes like 2 green moons in the darkness, facing the blazing eyes of Shere Khan. "And it is I, Raksha, who answer. The man's cub is mine, Lungri, mine to me. He shall not be killed. He shall live to run with the pack and to hunt with the pack, and in the end, look you, hunter of little naked cubs, frog-eater, fish-killer, he shall hunt thee. Now get hence, or by the Sampur that I killed, I eat no starved cattle. Back thou goest to thy mother, burned beast of the jungle, lamer than ever thou earnest into the world. Go." Father Wolf looked on amazed. He had almost forgotten the days when he had won Mother Wolf in fair fight from 5 other wolves, when she ran in the pack, and was not called the demon for compliment's sake. Shere Khan might have faced Father Wolf, but he could not stand up against Mother Wolf, for he knew that where he was she had all the advantage of the ground and would fight to the death. So he backed out of the cave mouth growling, and when he was clear he shouted, "Each dog barks in his own yard. We will see what the pack will say to this fostering of man cubs. The cub is mine, and to my teeth he will come in the end. O bush-tailed thieves!" Mother Wolf threw herself down panting among the cubs, and Father Wolf said to her gravely, "Shere Khan speaks this much truth, The cub must be shown to the pack. Wilt thou still keep him, mother? Keep him? She gasped. He came naked by night, alone and very hungry, yet he was not afraid. Look, he has pushed one of my babes to one side already, and that lame butcher would have killed him and would have run off to the Waingunga while the villagers here hunted through all our lairs in revenge. Keep him? Assuredly I will keep him. Lie still, little frog. O thou Mowgli, for Mowgli the frog I will call thee. The time will come when thou wilt hunt Shere Khan as he has hunted thee. But what will our pack say? Said Father Wolf. The law of the jungle lays down very clearly that any wolf may, when he marries, withdraw from the pack he belongs to. But as soon as his cubs are old enough to stand on their feet, he must bring them to the pack council, which is generally held once a month at full moon, in order that the other wolves may identify them. After that inspection, the cubs are free to run where they please, and until they have killed their first buck, no excuse is accepted if a grown wolf of the pack kills one of them. The punishment is death where the murderer can be found. And if you think for a minute, you will see that this must be so. Father Wolf waited till his cubs could run a little, and then on the night of the pack meeting took them and Mowgli and Mother Wolf to the Council Rock, a hilltop covered with stones and boulders where 100 wolves could hide. Akela, the great gray lone wolf, who led all the pack by strength and cunning, lay out at full length on his rock, and below him sat 40 more wolves of every size and color, from badger-colored veterans who could handle a buck alone, to young 2-year-olds who thought they could. The lone wolf had led them for a year now. He had fallen twice into a wolf trap in his youth, and once he had been beaten and left for dead, so he knew the manners and customs of men. There was very little talking at the rock. The cubs tumbled over each other in the center of the circle where their mothers and fathers sat, and now and again a senior wolf would go quietly up to a cub, look at him carefully, and return to his place on noiseless feet. Sometimes a mother would push her cub far out into the moonlight to be sure that he had not been overlooked. Akela from his rock would cry, "Ye know the law, ye know the law. Look well, O wolves." And the anxious mothers would take up the call, "Look, look well, O wolves," at last, and Mother Wolf's neck bristles lifted as the time came. Father Wolf pushed Mowgli the frog, as they called him, into the center, where he sat laughing and playing with some pebbles that glistened in the moonlight. Akela never raised his head from his paws, but went on with the monotonous cry, "Look well!" A muffled roar came up from behind the rocks, the voice of Shere Khan crying, "The cub is mine. Give him to me. What have the free people to do with a man's cub?" Akela never even twitched his ears. All he said was, "Look well, O wolves! What have the free people to do with the orders of any save the free people?" "Ah, well!" There was a chorus of deep growls, and a young wolf in his 4th year flung back Shere Khan's question to Akela, "What have the free people to do with a man's cub?" Now the law of the jungle lays down that if there is any dispute as to the right of a cub to be accepted by the pack, he must be spoken for by at least 2 members of the pack who are not his father and mother. "Who speaks for this cub?" said Akela. "Among the free people who speaks?" There was no answer, and Mother Wolf got ready for what she knew would be her last fight, if things came to fighting. Then the only other creature who is allowed at the pack council, Baloo, the sleepy brown bear who teaches the wolf cubs the law of the jungle, old Baloo, who can come and go where he pleases because he eats only nuts and roots and honey, rolls up on his hindquarters and grunted. "The man's cub, he said. "I speak for the man's cub. There is no harm in a man's cub. I have no gift of words, but I speak the truth. Let him run with the pack and be entered with the others. I myself will teach him." "We need yet another," said Akela. "Baloo has spoken, and he is our teacher for the young cubs. Who speaks beside Baloo?" A black shadow dropped down into the circle. It was Bagheera the Black Panther, inky black all over, but with the panther markings showing up in certain lights like the pattern of watered silk. Everybody knew Bagheera, and nobody cared to cross his path, for he was as cunning as Tabaqui, as bold as the wild buffalo, and as reckless as the wounded elephant. But he had a voice as soft as wild honey, dripping from a tree, and a skin softer than down. "O Akela, and ye the free people," he purred, "I have no right in your assembly, but the law of the jungle says that if there is a doubt which is not a killing matter in regard to a new cub, the life of that cub may be bought at a price. And the law does not say who may or may not pay that price. Am I right?" "Good, good," said the young wolves, who are always hungry. "Listen to Bagheera. The cub can be bought for a price. It is the law. Knowing that I have no right to speak here, I ask your leave." "Speak then," cried 20 voices. "To kill a naked cub is shame. Besides, he may make better sport for you when he is grown. Baloo has spoken in his behalf. Now to Baloo's word I will add 1 bull, and a fat one, newly killed, not half a mile from here, if ye will accept a man's cub according to the law. Is it difficult?" There was a clamor of scores of voices saying, "What matter? He will die in the winter rains. He will scorch in the sun. What harm can a naked frog do us? Let him run with the pack. Where is the bull, Bagheera? Let him be accepted." And then came Akela's deep bay, crying, look well, O wolves!" Mowgli was still deeply interested in the pebbles, and he did not notice when the wolves came and looked at him one by one. At last they all went down the hill for the dead bull, and only Akela, Bagheera, Baloo, and Mowgli's own wolves were left. Shere Khan roared still in the night, for he was very angry that Mowgli had not been handed over to him. "I roar well," said Bagheera under his whiskers, "for the time comes when this naked thing will make thee roar to another tune, or I know nothing of man." "It was well done," said Akela. "Men and their cubs are very wise. He may be a help in time, truly a help in time of need, for none can hope to lead the pack forever," said Bagheera. Akela said nothing. He was thinking of the time that comes to every leader of every pack, when his strength goes from him, and he gets feebler and feebler, till at last he is killed by the wolves, and a new leader comes up to be killed in his turn. "Take him away," he said to Father Wolf, "and train him as befits one of the free people." And that is how Mowgli was entered into the Seeonee wolf pack for the price of a bull and on Baloo's good word. Now you must be content to skip 10 or 11 whole years and only guess at all the wonderful life Mowgli led among the wolves, because if it were written out, it would fill ever so many books. He grew up with the cubs, though they, of course, were grown wolves almost before he was a child, and Father Wolf taught him his business and the meaning of things in the jungle, till every rustle in the grass, every breath of the warm night air, every note of the owls above his head, every scratch of a bat's claws as it roosted for a while in a tree, and every splash of every little fish jumping in a pool meant just as much to him as the work of his office means to a businessman. When he was not learning, he sat out in the sun and slept, and ate and went to sleep again. When he felt dirty or hot, he swam in the forest pools, and when he wanted honey, Baloo told him that honey and nuts were just as pleasant to eat as raw meat. He climbed up for it, and that Bagheera showed him how to do. Bagheera would lie out on a branch and call, "Come along, little brother." And at first Mowgli would cling like the sloth, but afterward he would fling himself through the branches almost as boldly as the gray ape. He took his place at the council rock, too, when the pack met, and there he discovered that if he stared hard at any wolf, the wolf would be forced to drop his eyes, and so he used to stare for fun. At other times he would pick the long thorns out of the pads of his friends, for wolves suffer terribly from thorns and burrs in their coats. He would go down the hillside into the cultivated lands by night and look very curiously at the villagers in their huts. But he had a mistrust of men, because Bagheera showed him a square box with a drop gate so cunningly hidden in the jungle that he nearly walked into it, and told him that it was a trap. He loved better than anything else to go with Bagheera, into the dark, warm heart of the forest, to sleep all through the drowsy day, and at night see how Bagheera did his killing. Bagheera killed right and left as he felt hungry, and so did Mowgli, with one exception. As soon as he was old enough to understand things, Bagheera told him that he must never touch cattle because he had been bought into the pack at the price of a bull's life. "All the jungle is thine," said Bagheera, "and thou canst kill everything that thou art strong enough to kill, but for the sake of the bull that bought thee, thou must never kill or eat any cattle, young or old. That is the law of the jungle." Mowgli obeyed faithfully, and he grew strong, as a boy must grow who does not know that he is learning any lessons and who has nothing in the world to think of except things to eat. Mother Wolf told him once or twice that Shere Khan was not a creature to be trusted, and that someday he must kill Shere Khan. But though a young wolf would have remembered that advice every hour, Mowgli forgot it because he was only a boy, though he would have called himself a wolf if he had been able to speak in any human tongue. Shere Khan was always crossing his path in the jungle, for as Akela grew older and feebler, the lame tiger had come to be great friends with the younger wolves of the pack, who followed him for scraps, a thing Akela would never have allowed if he had dared to push his authority to the proper bounds. Then Shere Khan would flatter them and wonder that such fine young hunters were content to be led by a dying wolf and a man's cub. "They tell me," Shere Khan would say, "that at council ye dare not look him between the eyes," and the young wolves would growl and bristle. Bagheera, who had eyes and ears everywhere, knew something of this, and once or twice he told Mowgli in so many words that Shere Khan would kill him some day, and Mowgli would laugh and answer, "I have the pack and I have thee," and Baloo, though he is so lazy, might strike a blow or two for my sake. Why should I be afraid? It was one very warm day that a new notion came to Bagheera, born of something that he had heard. Perhaps Sahi the porcupine had told him, but he said to Mowgli when they were deep in the jungle, as the boy lay with his head on Bagheera's beautiful black skin, "Little brother, how often have I told thee that Shere Khan is thy enemy?" "As many times as there are nuts on that palm," said Mowgli, who naturally could not count. "What of it? I am sleepy, Bagheera, and Shere Khan is all long tail and loud talk like More the Peacock." "But this is no time for sleeping. Baloo knows it, I know it, the pack know it, and even the foolish deer know. Tabaqui has told thee too." "Ho, ho," said Mowgli. "Tabaqui came to me not long ago with some rude talk that I was a naked man's cub and not fit to dig pig nuts, but I caught Tabaqui by the tail and swung him twice against a palm tree to teach him better manners. That was foolishness, for though Tabaqui is a mischief maker, he would have told thee of something that concerned thee closely. Open those eyes, little brother. Shere Khan dare not kill thee in the jungle, but remember, Akela is very old, and soon the day comes when he cannot kill his buck, and then he will be leader no more. Many of the wolves that looked thee over when thou wast brought to the council first are old too, and the young wolves believe, as Shere Khan has taught them, that a man cub has no place with the pack. In a little time thou wilt be a man. And what is a man that he should not run with his brothers?" said Mowgli. "I was born in the jungle. I have obeyed the law of the jungle, and there is no wolf of ours from whose paws I have not pulled a thorn. Surely they are my brothers." Bagheera stretched himself at full length and half shut his eyes. "Little brother," said he, "feel under my jaw." Mowgli put up his strong brown hand, and just under Bagheera's silky chin, where the giant rolling muscles were all hid by the glossy hair, he came upon a little bald spot. "There is no one in the jungle that knows that I, Bagheera, carry that mark, the mark of the collar, and yet, little brother, I was born among men, and it was among men that my mother died, in the cages of the king's palace at Udipur. It was because of this that I paid the price for thee at the council when thou wast a little naked cub. Yes, I too was born among men. I had never seen the jungle. They fed me behind bars from an iron pan till one night I felt that I was Bagheera, the panther, and no man's plaything, and I broke the silly lock with one blow of my paw and came away, and because I had learned the ways of men, I became more terrible in the jungle than Shere Khan. Is it not so? Yes, said Mowgli. All the jungle feared Bagheera, all except Mowgli. Oh, thou art a man's cub, said the Black Panther very tenderly, and even as I return to my jungle, so thou must go back to men at last, to the men who are thy brothers, if thou art not killed in the council. But why should any wish to kill me? Said Mowgli. Look at me, said Bagheera, and Mowgli looked at him steadily between the eyes. The big panther turned his head away in half a minute. That is why, he said, shifting his paw on the leaves. Not even I can look thee between the eyes, and I was born among men, and I love thee, little brother. The others, they hate thee because their eyes cannot meet thine, because thou art wise, because thou hast pulled out thorns from their feet, because thou art a man. I did not know these things, said Mowgli sullenly, and he frowned under his heavy black eyebrows. What is the law of the jungle? Strike first and then give tongue. By thy very carelessness they know that thou art a man. But be wise, it is in my heart that when Akela misses his next kill, and at each hunt it costs him more to pin the buck, the pack will turn against him and against thee. They will hold a jungle council at the rock, and then, I have it, said Bagheera, leaping up. Go thou down quickly to the men's huts in the valley, and take some of the red flower which they grow there, so that when the time comes thou mayest have even a stronger friend than I or Baloo or those of the pack that love thee. Get the red flower. By red flower Bagheera meant fire. Only no creature in the jungle will call fire by its proper name. Every beast lives in deadly fear of it and invents 100 ways of describing it. The red flower, said Mowgli, that grows outside their huts in the twilight. I will get some. There speaks the man's cub, said Bagheera proudly. Remember that it grows in little pots. Get one swiftly and keep it by thee for time of need. Good, said Mowgli. I go, but art thou sure, my Bagheera? He slipped his arm round the splendid neck and looked deep into the big eyes. Art thou sure that all this is Shere Khan's doing? By the broken lock that freed me, I'm sure, little brother. Then by the bull that bought me, I will pay Shere Khan full tale for this, and it may be a little over, said Mowgli, and he bounded away. That is a man. That is all a man, said Bagheera to himself, lying down again. Oh, Shere Khan, never was a blacker hunting than that frog hunt of thine 10 years ago. Mowgli was far and far through the forest, running hard, and his heart was hot in him. He came to the cave as the evening mist rose, and drew breath and looked down the valley. The cubs were out, but Mother Wolf at the back of the cave knew by his breathing that something was troubling her frog. What is it, son? She said. Some best chatter of Shere Khan, he called back. I hunt among the plough fields tonight, and he plunged downward through the bushes to the stream at the bottom of the valley. There he checked, for he heard the yell of the pack hunting, heard the bellow of a hunted Sambur, and the snort as the buck turned at bay. Then there were wicked, bitter howls from the young wolves. Akela, Akela, let the lone wolf show his strength. Room for the leader of the pack. Spring, Akela. The lone wolf must have sprung and missed his hold, for Mowgli heard the snap of his teeth and then a yelp as the Sambur knocked him over with his forefoot. He did not wait for anything more, but dashed on, and the yells grew fainter behind him as he ran into the croplands where the villagers lived. Bagheera spoke truth, he panted as he nestled down in some cattle fodder by the window of a hut. Tomorrow is one day both for Akela and for me. Then he pressed his face close to the window and watched the fire on the hearth. He saw the husbandman's wife get up and feed it in the night with black lumps, and when the morning came and the mists were all white and cold, he saw the man's child pick up a wicker pot plastered inside with earth, fill it with lumps of red-hot charcoal, put it under his blanket, and go out to tend the cows in the byre. "Is that all?" said Mowgli. "If a cub can do it, there is nothing to fear." So he strode round the corner and met the boy, took the pot from his hand, and disappeared into the mist while the boy howled with fear. "They are very like me," said Mowgli, blowing into the pot as he had seen the woman do. "This thing will die if I do not give it things to eat," and he dropped twigs and dried bark on the red stuff. Halfway up the hill he met Bagheera with the morning dew shining like moonstones on his coat. "Akela has missed," said the panther. "They would have killed him last night, but they needed thee also. They were looking for thee on the hill. I was among the plowed lands. I am ready. See." Mowgli held up the fire pot. "Good. Now I have seen men thrust a dry branch into that stuff, and presently the red flower blossomed at the end of it. Art thou not afraid?" "No. Why should I fear? I remember now, if it is not a dream, how before I was a wolf I lay beside the red flower, and it was warm and pleasant. All that day Mowgli sat in the cave tending his fire pot and dipping dry branches into it to see how they looked. He found a branch that satisfied him, and in the evening when Tabaqui came to the cave and told him rudely enough that he was wanted at the council rock, he laughed till Tabaqui ran away. Then Mowgli went to the council, still laughing. Akela the lone wolf lay by the side of his rock as a sign that the leadership of the pack was open, and Shere Khan with his following of scrap-fed wolves walked to and fro, openly being flattered. Bagheera lay close to Mowgli, and the fire pot was between Mowgli's knees. When they were all gathered together, Shere Khan began to speak, a thing he would never have dared to do when Akela was in his prime. "He has no right," whispered Bagheera. "Say so. He is a dog's son. He will be frightened." Mowgli sprang to his feet. "Free people," he cried. "Does Shere Khan lead the pack? What has a tiger to do with our leadership?" Seeing that the leadership is yet open and being asked to speak, Shere Khan began. "By whom?" said Mowgli. "Are we all jackals to fawn on this cattle butcher? The leadership of the pack is with the pack alone." There were yells of "Silence, thou man's cub! Let him speak. He has kept our law." And at last the seniors of the pack thundered, "Let the dead wolf speak. When a leader of the pack has missed his kill, he is called the dead wolf as long as he lives, which is not long." Akela raised his old head wearily. "Free people, and ye too, jackals of Shere Khan, for 12 seasons I have led ye to and from the kill, and in all that time not one has been trapped or maimed. Now I have missed my kill. Ye know how that plot was made. Ye know how ye brought me up to an untried buck to make my weakness known. It was cleverly done. Your right is to kill me here on the council rock now. Therefore I ask, who comes to make an end of the lone wolf? For it is my right by the law of the jungle that ye come one by one." There was a long hush, for no single wolf cared to fight Akela to the death. Then Shere Khan roared, "Bah! What have we to do with this toothless fool? He is doomed to die. It is the man-cub who has lived too long. Free people, he was my meat from the first. Give him to me. I am weary of this man-wolf folly. He has troubled the jungle for 10 seasons. Give me the man-cub, or I will hunt here always and not give you one bone. He is a man's child, and from the marrow of my bones I hate him." Then more than half the pack yelled, "A man! A man! What has a man to do with us? Let him go to his own place and turn all the people of the villages against us," clamored Shere Khan. "No, give him to me. He is a man, and none of us can look him between the eyes." Akela lifted his head again and said, "He has eaten our food. He has slept with us. He has driven game for us. He has broken no word of the law of the jungle. Also, I paid for him with a bull when he was accepted. The worth of a bull is little, but Bagheera's honor is something that he will perhaps fight for," said Bagheera in his gentlest voice. "A bull paid 10 years ago," the pack snarled. "What do we care for bones 10 years old? Or for a pledge," said Bagheera, his white teeth bared under his lip. "Well, are ye called the free people?" No man's cub can run with the people of the jungle, howled Shere Khan. Give him to me. He is our brother in all but blood, Akela went on, and ye would kill him here. In truth, I have lived too long. Some of ye are eaters of cattle, and of others I have heard that under Shere Khan's teaching ye go by dark night and snatch children from the village's doorstep. Therefore I know ye to be cowards, and it is to cowards I speak. It is certain that I must die, and my life is of no worth, or I would offer that in the man-cub's place. But for the sake of the honor of the pack, a little matter that by being without a leader ye have forgotten, I promise that if ye let the man-cub go to his own place, I will not, when my time comes to die, bear one tooth against ye. I will die without fighting. That will at least save the pack 3 lives. More I cannot do, but if you will, I can save you the shame that comes of killing a brother against whom there is no fault, a brother spoken for and brought into the pack according to the law of the jungle. He is a man, a man, a man, snarled the pack, and most of the wolves began to gather round Shere Khan, whose tail was beginning to switch. Now the business is in thy hands, said Bagheera to Mowgli. We can do no more except fight. Mowgli stood upright, the fire pot in his hands. Then he stretched out his arms and yawned in the face of the council, but he was furious with rage and sorrow, for wolf-like the wolves had never told him how they hated him. Listen you, he cried, there is no need for this dog's jabber. Ye have told me so often tonight that I am a man, and indeed I would have been a wolf with you to my life's end, that I feel your words are true. So I do not call you my brothers any more, but sag, as a man should. What ye will do and what ye will not do is not yours to say. That matter is with me, and that we may see the matter more plainly, I, the man, have brought here a little of the red flower which ye dogs fear. He flung the fire pot on the ground, and some of the red coals lit a tuft of dried moss that flared up as all the council drew back in terror before the leaping flames. Mowgli thrust his dead branch into the fire till the twigs lit and crackled, and whirled it above his head among the cowering wolves. Thou art the master, said Bagheera in an undertone. Save Akela from the death. He was ever thy friend. Akela, the grim old wolf who had never asked for mercy in his life, gave one piteous look at Mowgli as the boy stood all naked, his long black hair tossing over his shoulders in the light of the blazing branch that made the shadows jump and quiver. Good, said Mowgli, staring round slowly. I see that ye are dogs. I go from you to my own people, if they be Ray own people. The jungle is shut to me, and I must forget your talk and your companionship, but I will be more merciful than ye are. Because I was all but your brother in blood, I promise that when I am a man among men, I will not betray ye to men as ye have betrayed me. He kicked the fire with his foot, and the sparks flew up. There shall be no war between any of us in the pack. But here is a debt to pay before I go. He strode forward to where Shere Khan sat blinking stupidly at the flames, and caught him by the tuft on his chin. Bagheera followed in case of accidents. Up, dog, Mowgli cried. Up when a man speaks, or I will set that coat ablaze. Shere Khan's ears lay flat back on his head, and he shut his eyes, for the blazing branch was very near. This cattle killer said he would kill me in the council because he had not killed me when I was a cub. Thus and thus then do we beat dogs when we are men. Stir a whisker, Lungri, and I ram the red flower down thy gullet. He beat Shere Khan over the head with the branch, and the tiger whimpered and whined in an agony of fear. Pah! Singe Jungle Cat, go now. But remember, when next I come to the council rock, as a man should come, it will be with Shere Khan's hide on my head. For the rest, Akela goes free to live as he pleases. Ye will not kill him, because that is not my will, nor do I think that ye will sit here any longer, lolling out your tongues as though ye were somebodies, instead of dogs whom I drive out. Thus, go. The fire was burning furiously at the end of the branch, and Mowgli struck right and left round the circle, and the wolves ran howling with the sparks burning their fur. At last there were only Akela, Bagheera, and perhaps 10 wolves that had taken Mowgli's part. Then something began to hurt Mowgli inside him, as he had never been hurt in his life before, and he caught his breath and sobbed, and the tears ran down his face. "What is it? What is it?" he said. "I do not wish to leave the jungle, and I do not know what this is. Am I dying, Bagheera?" "No, little brother, that is only tears such as men use," said Bagheera. "Now I know thou art a man, and a man's cub no longer. The jungle is shut indeed to thee henceforward. Let them fall, Mowgli. They are only tears." So Mowgli sat and cried as though his heart would break, and he had never cried in all his life before. "Now," he said, "I will go to men. But first I must say farewell to my mother." And he went to the cave where she lived with Father Wolf, and he cried on her coat while the 4 cubs howled miserably. "You will not forget me," said Mowgli. "Never while we can follow a trail," said the cubs. "Come to the foot of the hill when thou art a man, and we will talk to thee, and we will come into the croplands to play with thee by night." "Come soon," said Father Wolf. "Oh, wise little frog, come again soon, for we be old, thy mother and I." "Come soon," said Mother Wolf. "Little naked son of mine, for listen, child of man, I love thee more than ever I love my cubs." "I will surely come," said Mowgli, "and when I come, it will be to lay out Shere Khan's hide upon the Council Rock. Do not forget me. Tell them in the jungle never to forget me." The dawn was beginning to break when Mowgli went down the hillside alone to meet those mysterious things that are called men, jackal or tiger. One hot night in Hindustan, a king and queen lay awake in the palace in the midst of the city. Every now and then a faint air blew through the lattice, and they hoped they were going to sleep, but they never did. Presently they became more broad awake than ever at the sound of a howl outside the palace. "Listen to that tiger," remarked the king. "Tiger," replied the queen. "How should there be a tiger inside the city? It was only a jackal." "I tell you it was a tiger," said the king, "and I tell you that you were dreaming if you thought it was anything but a jackal," answered the queen. "I say it was a tiger," cried the king. "Don't contradict me." "Nonsense," snapped the queen. "It was a jackal." And the dispute waxed so warm that the king said at last, "Very well, we'll call the guard and ask. And if it was a jackal, I'll leave this kingdom to you and go away. And if it was a tiger, then you shall go, and I will marry a new wife." "As you like," answered the queen. "There isn't any doubt which it was." So the king called the 2 soldiers who were on guard outside and put the question to them. But whilst the dispute was going on, the king and queen had got so excited and talked so loud that the guards had heard nearly all they said, and one man observed to the other, "Mind you declare that the king is right. It certainly was a jackal, but if we say so, the king will probably not keep his word about going away, and we shall get into trouble, so we had better take his side." To this the other agreed. Therefore, when the king asked them what animal they had seen, both the guards said it was certainly a tiger, and that the king was right, of course, as he always was. The king made no remark, but sent for a palanquin and ordered the queen to be placed in it, bidding the 4 bearers of the palanquin to take her a long way off into the forest, and there leave her. In spite of her tears, she was forced to obey, and away the bearers went for 3 days and 3 nights until they came to a dense wood. There they set down the palanquin with the queen in it and started home again. Now the queen thought to herself that the king could not mean to send her away for good, and that as soon as he had got over his fit of temper, he would summon her back. So she stayed quite still for a long time, listening with all her ears for approaching footsteps, but heard none. After a while she grew nervous, for she was all alone, and put her head out of the palanquin and looked about her. Day was just breaking, and birds and insects were beginning to stir. The leaves rustled in a warm breeze, but although the queen's eyes wandered in all directions, there was no sign of any human being. Then her spirit gave way, and she began to cry. It so happened that close to the spot where the queen's palanquin had been set down, there dwelt a man who had a tiny farm in the midst of the forest, where he and his wife lived alone, far from any neighbors. As it was hot weather, the farmer had been sleeping on the flat roof of his house, but was awakened by the sound of weeping. He jumped up and ran downstairs as fast as he could and into the forest towards the place the sound came from, and there he found the palanquin. "Oh, poor soul that weeps," cried the farmer, standing a little way off. "Who are you?" At this salutation from a stranger, the queen grew silent, dreading she knew not what. "Oh, you that weep," repeated the farmer, "fear not to speak to me, for you are to me as a daughter. Tell me, who are you?" His voice was so kind that the queen gathered up her courage and spoke. And when she had told her story, the farmer called his wife, who led her to their house and gave her food to eat and a bed to lie on. And in the farm, a few days later, a little prince was born, and by his mother's wish named Unmannerly. Years passed without a sign from the king. His wife might have been dead for all he seemed to care, though the queen still lived with the farmer, and the little prince had by this time grown up into a strong, handsome, and healthy youth. Out in the forest they seemed far from the world. Very few ever came near them, and the prince was continually begging his mother and the farmer to be allowed to go away and seek adventures and to make his own living. But she and the wise farmer always counseled him to wait, until at last, when he was 18 years of age, they had not the heart to forbid him any longer. So he started off one early morning with a sword by his side, a big brass pot to hold water, a few pieces of silver, and a galale or two-string bow in his hand, with which to shoot birds as he traveled. Many a weary mile he tramped day after day, until one morning he saw before him just such a forest as that in which he had been born and bred, and he stepped joyfully into it, like one who goes to meet an old friend. Presently, as he made his way through a thicket, he saw a pigeon, which he thought would make a good dinner, so he fired a pellet at it from his galale, but missed the pigeon, which fluttered away with a startled clatter. At the same instant he heard a great clamor from beyond the thicket, and on reaching the spot he found an ugly old woman streaming wet and crying loudly as she lifted from her head an earthen vessel with a hole in it from which the water was pouring. When she saw the prince with his galale in his hand, she called out, "Oh, wretched one! Why must you choose an old woman like me to play your pranks upon? Where am I to get a fresh pitcher instead of this one that you have broken with your foolish tricks? And how am I to go so far for water twice when one journey wearies me?" "But, mother," replied the prince, "I played no trick upon you. I did but shoot at a pigeon that should have served me for dinner, and as my pellet missed it, it must have broken your pitcher. But in exchange, you shall have my brass pot, and that will not break easily. And as for getting water, tell me where to find it, and I'll fetch it while you dry your garments in the sun and carry it whither you will." At this the old woman's face brightened. She showed him where to seek the water, and when he returned a few minutes later with his pot filled to the brim, she led the way without a word, and he followed. In a short while they came to a hut in the forest, and as they drew near it, Unmannerly beheld in the doorway the loveliest damsel his eyes had ever looked on. At the sight of a stranger, she drew her veil about her and stepped into the hut, and much as he wished to see her again, Unmannerly could think of no excuse by which to bring her back, and so, with a heavy heart, he made his salutation and bade the old woman farewell. But when he had gone a little way, she called after him, "If ever you are in trouble or danger, come to where you now stand and cry, 'Fairy of the forest, Fairy of the forest, help me now,' and I will listen to you." The prince thanked her and continued his journey, but he thought little of the old woman's saying and much of the lovely damsel. Shortly afterwards he arrived at a city, and as he was now in great straits, having come to the end of his money, he walked straight to the palace of the king and asked for employment, The king said he had plenty of servants and wanted no more, but the young man pleaded so hard that at last the Raja was sorry for him and promised that he should enter his bodyguard on the condition that he would undertake any service which was especially difficult or dangerous. This was just what Amir Ali wanted, and he agreed to do whatever the king might wish. Soon after this, on a dark and stormy night, when the river roared beneath the palace walls, the sound of a woman weeping and wailing was heard above the storm. The king ordered a servant to go and see what was the matter, but the servant, falling on his knees in terror, begged that he might not be sent on such an errand, particularly on a night so wild when evil spirits and witches were sure to be abroad. Indeed, so frightened was he that the king, who was very kind-hearted, bade another to go in his stead, but each one showed the same strange fear. Then Amir Ali stepped forward. "This is my duty, Your Majesty," he said. "I will go." The king nodded, and off he went. The night was as dark as pitch, and the wind blew furiously and drove the rain in sheets into his face, but he made his way down to the ford under the palace walls and stepped into the flooded water. Inch by inch and foot by foot he fought his way across, now nearly swept off his feet by some sudden swirl or eddy, now narrowly escaping being caught in the branches of some floating tree that came tossing and swinging down the stream. At length he emerged, panting and dripping wet, on the other side. Close by the bank stood a gallows, and on the gallows hung the body of some evildoer, whilst from the foot of it came the sound of sobbing that the king had heard. Amir Ali was so grieved for the one who wept there that he thought nothing of the wildness of the night or of the roaring river. As for ghosts and witches, they had never troubled him, so he walked up towards the gallows where crouched the figure of the woman. "What ails you?" he said. Now the woman was not really a woman at all, but a horrid kind of witch who really lived in Witchland and had no business on earth. If ever a man strayed into Witchland, the ogresses used to eat him up, and this old witch thought she would like to catch a man for supper, and that is why she had been sobbing and crying in hopes that someone out of pity might come to her rescue. So when Amir Ali questioned her, she replied, "Ah, kind sir, it is my poor son who hangs upon that gallows. Help me to get him down, and I will bless you forever." Amir Ali thought that her voice sounded rather eager than sorrowful, and he suspected that she was not telling the truth, so he determined to be very cautious. "That will be rather difficult," he said, "for the gallows is high, and we have no ladder. Ah, but if you will just stoop down and let me climb upon your shoulders," answered the old witch, "I think I could reach him." And her voice now sounded so cruel that Amir Ali was sure that she intended some evil, but he only said, "Very well, we will try." With that he drew his sword, pretending that he needed it to lean upon, and bent so that the old woman could clamber onto his back, which she did very nimbly. Then suddenly he felt a noose slipped over his neck, and the old witch sprang from his shoulders onto the gallows, crying, "Now, foolish one, I have got you, and will kill you for my supper." But Amir Ali gave a sweep upwards with his sharp sword to cut the rope that she had slipped round his neck, and not only cut the cord, but cut also the old woman's foot as it dangled above him, and with a yell of pain and anger she vanished into the darkness. Amir Ali then sat down to collect himself a little, and felt upon the ground by his side an anklet that had evidently fallen off the old witch's foot. This he put into his pocket, and as the storm had by this time passed over, he made his way back to the palace. When he had finished his story, he took the anklet out of his pocket and handed it to the king, who, like everyone else, was amazed at the glory of the jewels which composed it. Indeed, Amir Ali himself was astonished, for he had slipped the anklet into his pocket in the dark, and had not looked at it since. The king was delighted at its beauty, and having praised and rewarded Amir Ali, he gave the anklet to his daughter, a proud and spoiled princess. Now, in the women's apartments in the palace there hung 2 cages, in one of which was a parrot, and in the other a starling, and these 2 birds could talk as well as human beings. They were both pets of the princess, who always fed them herself, and the next day, as she was walking grandly about with her treasure tied round her ankles, she heard the starling say to the parrot, "Oh, Tote," that was the parrot's name, "how do you think the princess looks in her new jewel?" "Think?" snapped the parrot, who was cross because they hadn't given him his bath that morning. "I think she looks like a washerwoman's daughter, with one shoe on and the other off. Why doesn't she wear 2 of them, instead of going about with one leg adorned and the other empty?" When the princess heard this, she burst into tears, and sending for her father, she declared that he must get her another such an anklet to wear on the other leg, or she would die of shame. So the king sent for Amir Ali and told him that he must get a second anklet exactly like the first within a month, or he should be hanged, for the princess would certainly die of disappointment. Poor Amir Ali was greatly troubled at the king's command, but he thought to himself that he had at any rate a month in which to lay his plans. He left the palace at once and inquired of everyone where the finest jewels were to be got, but though he sought night and day, he never found one to compare with the anklet. At last only a week remained, and he was in sore difficulty when he remembered the fairy of the forest and determined to go without loss of time and seek her. Therefore away he went, and after a day's traveling he reached the cottage in the forest, and standing where he had stood when the old woman called to him, he cried, "Fairy of the forest, fairy of the forest, help me, help me!" Then there appeared in the doorway the beautiful girl he had seen before, whom in all his wanderings he had never forgotten. "What is the matter?" she asked, in a voice so soft that he listened like one struck dumb, and she had to repeat the question before he could answer. Then he told her his story, and she went within the cottage and came back with 2 wands and a pot of boiling water. The 2 wands she planted in the ground about 6 feet apart, and then turning to him she said, "I am going to lie down between these 2 wands. You must then draw your sword and cut off my foot, and as soon as you have done that, you must seize it and hold it over the cauldron, and every drop of blood that falls from it into the water will become a jewel. Next you must change the wands so that the one that stood at my head is at my feet, and the one at my feet stands at my head, and place the severed foot against the wound, and it will heal, and I shall become quite well again as before." At first Amir Ali declared that he would sooner be hanged 20 times over than treat her so roughly, but at length she persuaded him to do her bidding. He nearly fainted himself with horror when he found that, after the cruel blow which lopped her foot off, she lay as one lifeless, but he held the severed foot over the cauldron, and as drops of blood fell from it, and he saw each turn in the water into shining gems, his heart took courage. Very soon there were plenty of jewels in the cauldron, and he quickly changed the wands, placed the severed foot against the wound, and immediately the 2 parts became one as before. Then the maiden opened her eyes, sprang to her feet, and drawing her veil about her, ran into the hut, and would not come out or speak to him any more. For a long while he waited, but as she did not appear, he gathered up the precious stones and returned to the palace. He easily got someone to set the jewels, and found that there were enough to make not only 1, but 3 rare and beautiful anklets, and these he duly presented to the king on the very day that his month of grace was over. The king embraced him warmly and made him rich gifts, and the next day the vain princess put 2 anklets on each foot, and strutted up and down in them, admiring herself in the mirrors that lined her room. "Oh, Tote," asked the starling, "how do you think our princess looks now in these fine jewels?" "Ugh!" growled the parrot, who was really always cross in the mornings, and never recovered his temper until after lunch. She's got all her beauty at one end of her now. If she had a few of those fine gewgaws round her neck and wrists, she would look better. But now, to my mind, she looks more than ever like the washerwoman's daughter dressed up. Poor princess! She wept and stormed and raved until she made herself quite ill, and then she declared to her father that, unless she had bracelets and necklace to match the anklets, she would die. Again the king sent for Amir Ali and ordered him to get a necklace and bracelets to match those anklets within a month, or be put to a cruel death. And again Amir Ali spent nearly the whole month searching for the jewels, but all in vain. At length he made his way to the hut in the forest, and stood and cried, Fairy of the forest, help me, help me. Once more the beautiful maiden appeared at his summons and asked what he wanted. And when he had told her, she said he must do exactly as he had done the first time, except that now he must cut off both her hands and her head. Her words turned Amir Ali pale with horror, but she reminded him that no harm had come to her before, and at last he consented to do as she bade him. From her severed hands and head there fell into the cauldron bracelets and chains of rubies and diamonds, emeralds and pearls that surpassed any that ever were seen. Then the head and hands were joined onto the body and left neither sign nor scar. Full of gratitude, Amir Ali tried to speak to her, but she ran into the house and would not come back, and he was forced to leave her and go away laden with the jewels. When, on the day appointed, Amir Ali produced a necklace and bracelets, each more beautiful and priceless than the last, the king's astonishment knew no bounds, and as for his daughter, she was nearly mad with joy. The very next morning she put on all her finery, and thought that now, at least, that disagreeable parrot could find no fault with her appearance, and she listened eagerly when she heard the starling say, "Oh, Toad, how do you think our princess is looking now?" "Very fine, no doubt," grumbled the parrot. "But what is the use of dressing up like that for oneself only? She ought to have a husband. Why doesn't she marry the man who got all these splendid things?" Then the princess sent for her father and told him that she wished to marry Amir Ali. "My dear child," said her father, "you really are very difficult to please and want something new every day. It certainly is time you married someone, and if you choose this man, of course he shall marry you." So the king sent for Amir Ali and told him that within a month he proposed to do him the honor of marrying him to the princess and making him heir to the throne. On hearing this speech, Amir Ali bowed low and answered that he had done and would do the king all the service that lay in his power, save only this one thing. The king, who considered his daughter's hand a prize for any man, flew into a passion, and the princess was more furious still. Amir Ali was instantly thrown into the most dismal prison that they could find, and ordered to be kept there until the king had time to think in what way he should be put to death. Meanwhile, the king determined that the princess ought in any case to be married without delay, so he sent forth heralds throughout the neighboring countries, proclaiming that on a certain day any person fitted for a bridegroom and heir to the throne should present himself at the palace. When the day came, all the court were gathered together, and a great crowd assembled of men, young and old, who thought that they had as good a chance as anyone else to gain both the throne and the princess. As soon as the king was seated, he called upon an usher to summon the first claimant, but just then a farmer who stood in front of the crowd cried out that he had a petition to offer. "Well, hasten then," said the king. "I have no time to waste." "Your Majesty," said the farmer, "has now lived and administered just as long in this city, and will know that the tiger, who is king of beasts, hunts only in the forest, whilst jackals hunt in every place where there is something to be picked up." "What is all this? What is all this?" asked the king. "The man must be mad." "No, your Majesty," answered the farmer. I would only remind your majesty that there are plenty of jackals gathered today to try and claim your daughter and kingdom. Every city has sent them, and they wait hungry and eager. But do not, O king, mistake or pretend again to mistake the howl of a jackal for the hunting cry of a tiger." The king turned first red and then pale. "There is," continued the farmer, "a royal tiger bred in the forest who has the first and only true claim to your throne." "Where? What do you mean?" stammered the king, growing pale as he listened. "In prison," replied the farmer. "If your majesty will clear this court of the jackals, I will explain." "Clear the court!" commanded the king, and very unwillingly the visitors left the palace. "Now tell me what riddle this is," said he. Then the farmer told the king and his ministers how he had rescued the queen and brought up Amir Ali, and he fetched the old queen herself, whom he had left outside. At the sight of her, the king was filled with shame and self-reproach, and wished he could have lived his life over again and not have married the mother of the proud princess who caused him endless trouble until her death. "My day is past," said he, and he gave up his crown to his son Amir Ali, who went once more and called to the forest fairy to provide him with a queen to share his throne. "There is only one person I will marry," said he, and this time the maiden did not run away, but agreed to be his wife. So the two were married without delay, and lived long and reigned happily. As for the old woman whose pitcher Amir Ali had broken, she was the forest maiden's fairy godmother, and when she was no longer needed to look after the girl, she gladly returned to fairyland. The old king has never been heard to contradict his wife anymore. If he even looks as if he does not agree with her, she smiles at him and says, "Is it the tiger then, or the jackal?" And he has not another word to say.